Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here,
And Rohith Dharr.
and welcome to the Godzilla -1 SpoilerCast. All right, folks, I genuinely don't know how much engagement this is going to get. I know that in the circles of people that have seen this film, most everybody loves it, but that being said, it's not like this is like a major blockbuster or anything, even though it should be. So, yeah, Rohit, you asked me literally right after we did the holdovers if I have seen this movie. I said, yes, I have, and it kicked a lot of ass. So here we are. Rohit, I'm going to give you the floor. Tell me, why were you compelled to even talk about it? Like, this is kind of like a big occasion here to talk about the movie, because we don't usually talk about like movies of this kind of scale, like, you know, at least as far as full-blown spoiler casts go.
So, I'll give you sort of the background in regards to this movie for my experience and understanding of it. It's when, as anyone knows, as you know, specifically Tiki, me, like a good friend of mine, and I have like a shared subscription to Alamo Draft House, and going to watching so many movies over this course of the year. We've seen this trailer for this movie, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And one of my close friends who didn't have the subscription, he said he just texted an image, is like, hey, here's the show times for this day, and it was on Sunday, December 3rd. It was my birthday, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And originally, my friend who had the subscription was just gonna give us the tickets and bounce, but he decided to join us. So it was all three of us that watched it, and after going to watch the movie and finishing it, we all were just floored by how good this movie was. In my experience of watching in terms of my experience with the Godzilla franchise, this is my second Godzilla movie. The first one being the 2014 one. So in terms of my level of experience or like familiarity with that franchise, it's very minimal. Godzilla is like one of those franchises that wasn't really a big part of my life growing up, and with that though. There were so many good reviews, and just watching it, just the level of craftsmanship, the level of care, and the fact that we're all three of us, we're all, I don't think any of us three really watch a lot of foreign movies, really watch a lot of Godzilla movies. One of my friends, one of the three that was there was, after watching this, he's been watching all the other Godzilla movies. But just, I think the fact is that I know you said there's not a blockbuster. The thing is, like, since this movie,
it's not a Hollywood blockbuster. I mean, I'm sure for Japan it's huge.
No. But what I'm saying is that even like American critics are hyping this up, and it's getting an extended theatrical run. It's getting more showings in theaters across the states. So clearly, like, people that watch it really like this movie, and I figure I would be compelled to ask you about it, Tiki, because in terms of art, Love Dragon, all that, out of the two of you, it's more likely that you would have seen or heard about this movie and been interested to watch it. So that was why I compelled to just ask you about it. And I figured maybe like you might have I figured you might have like been into Godzilla franchise or watched it, you have like a familiarity enough to speak intelligently on like what this movie does unique and interesting ways. And I guess I think for the fact is, it's like, have you all ever done spoiler casts or just done big coverage on like foreign films before?
No, that's the thing. That's why I'm saying it's kind of new territory for us.
Yeah.
So I genuinely, like, if we were to have done one, it would have probably been for something like Parasite, but I don't even think we did one for Parasite. So, no, I genuinely can't think of one that we've done.
Did you ever do a spoiler cast on Squid Games?
No. We didn't do a spoiler cast on Squid Games. We were just kind of behind the ball on that one.
Yeah. But yeah, I think just the way this movie the way I would watch this movie and just seeing from the opening scene to the end is like, wow. Like, I was just shocked at how really good it is. And, I guess maybe it's a bit of a spoiler for when we do like top 10s, if I get involved with you guys on that part. This is easy, like top 5, not top 3 movies of the year. It's that good.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I just ranked up all the movies that I saw this year. At least not every one, but I kind of like did a cursory glance and put on every movie that kind of like I thought could make an end of the year list. And I think I have a pretty definitive top 5 that I'm really happy with, and this is pretty comfortably in it.
Yeah.
And honestly, within that top 5, I kind of feel like I can switch it around in any number of ways.
Sure.
But regardless, as for me, like my history with Godzilla, it's funny, like as a kid, I definitely engaged with the franchise. It's just for the life of me, I'm sure I watched Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla because I do remember that. I'm sure I watched King Ghidorah. I actually have vivid memories of the standalone Mothra movies, like the one where they're on the island with the 2 fairy ladies and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think I actually have more vivid memories of those movies than the actual Godzilla movies. Kogias is in the comments. He says, 0 stars, not enough Ken Watanabe. Let them fight. So regardless, I definitely I'm into the I don't know if I've ever actually sat down and watched the original Japanese Godzilla, like the original without the English dub or anything, which is something that I really need to do, especially in the light of this. I remember being very vividly hyped for 2014 Godzilla, and Dragon and I both agree that that movie was awesome for about 20 minutes. And then Bryan Cranston got killed off. And Rohit, to this day, Bryan Cranston getting killed off in that movie is one of the biggest, like, air of excitement just being let out of a crowded theater moments I have ever experienced. Like, you could just feel the energy level in that theater just evaporate when that guy was dead in that movie. It's like, oh, fuck, we have to follow Aaron Taylor Johnson the whole time now? Oh, no.
I mean, I guess to defend good Mr. Johnson, he's not a bad actor, but I really think
it was a bad character, though.
Yeah,
you can't defend that character. I mean, he was just generic soldier man.
Yeah. Honestly, like had Bryan Cranston stayed on, was alive afterwards, I think he would have gotten. I think he would have gotten like a good, I think the father-son dynamic that was there, I think would have made his character less generic. But yeah, with the way the movie turned out, it's not. It's cool visually, but I mean, it's Gareth Edwards, obviously, so he's going to put in a visual. Story-wise, it's it's not the most.
Kokion says, to be fair, Aaron Taylor Johnson is the second best live-action Quicksilver. There were only 2, but still.
I will say his version is more comic book accurate than Evan Peters.
That is fair. That is fair. All right. So, yeah, in regards to, so I came into this, I have heard the hype for sure. By the way, Kogias or Little Blues in the comments as well, saying CGI is better than The Flash, which is very true. And I have stuff to say about the visual look of this movie. I have heard so much hype about this movie. And so walking into it, I was hyped, but I was also kind of worried, okay, is this going to be a situation? Basically, Rohit, what I was kind of worried about was this was going to be another, Top Gun Maverick, where it's I want to make it clear, I like Top Gun Maverick as a movie. I don't think there's anything really wrong with it, and I see why people like it as much as they do. That being said, I honestly, for me personally, I didn't get much out of it. It didn't freaking blow me away like it did a lot of other people. I think a big part of that is just because, for me, it kind of felt yeah, this is basically kind of like a theme park ride of a movie, and if this wasn't on the big screen, I don't know what kind of impact this would have. So, honestly, Rohit, my reaction to this movie is basically I kind of feel like I just got the experience that everyone else got with Maverick. Because holy hell, is this everything that I wanted it to be. And for me, I think the icing on top of everything is in this year where we have seen just movies that cost fucking $150-200 million, and that's not even counting the marketing budgets.
Mm-hmm.
And they all look like sludge, like CGI, muddy ass CGI sludge. Some of them, like if you have like a James Gunn at the helm, they can look okay. But like I'm thinking like all of the DC stuff, all of the Marvel stuff that wasn't Guardians. It's not even that they're bad looking movies. They just all look very much like, yep, that's sure a lot of CG. Like, I see the trailer for the new Aquaman movie, and it just absolutely does nothing for me. It's just like this, like these movies might as well just be animated movies at this point, with how much we're just relying on CG for everything now.
In regards to Aquaman, when I saw the trailer for the second one, I will say Atlantis looks, for whatever reason, a lot more toyetic, if that makes sense. Or like more plastic looking.
No, it does make sense. I mean, like, for me, I watched that trailer and nothing about it feels tangible.
The first one, it's super colorful, but I feel like it felt like still like not lived in, but it still felt like tangible. And I wonder if I think it's just part of the case. I think that the advantage of this movie has over the other movies is that it takes place in like a real world setting, post-war Japan. And really, the only thing that's super fantastical is Godzilla, and Godzilla is very much treated like the shark from Jaws, which is an apt, I think, comparison, considering like the fight, like the third act of the movie.
I mean, I think there's one set piece in particular that's very much like, yep, this is Godzilla but Jaws.
Yeah,
in a good way. Yeah. So this movie cost $15 million. So it's like, that is literally like a fraction of something like Quantumania or Blue Beetle, or I don't know, any of those, The Flash, any of those recent blockbusters. And for me, here's the thing. It's not just about the fact that Godzilla looks damn good, which he does, but it is about the fact that there are like dozens of extras in any given shot. There is like vivid set design that showcases the destruction and the cataclysmic aftermath of the war, and all that kind of stuff just really draws you into an old school level of filmmaking that I think Hollywood is just desperate to leave behind, in this era where everything is like AI generated, and we can like just copy and paste giant crowds of people into a computer environment. It's so refreshing. Like for me, the shot in the movie, like the opening scene is great. We'll touch on it. It's very Jurassic Park-esque. I love it. It sets up the themes of the main character very well. But the shot in the movie where I was like, okay, we are in really good hands, is when it's just like, it shows that boat, and it's just like, there's literally like hundreds of extras on the boat, and it just kind of zeroes in on our main guy, and it's like, yes, like you get more of the sense of scale, the sense of devastation in that shot than you do in 100 CGI shots. So, I think this movie is like hands down probably one of the best action movies since Mad Max Fury Road. I think it's just, it's just rich with subtext. The acting in the film just makes me want to seek out more Japanese cinema, because my God, they go for it in a way that American acting just doesn't. And this film has 4 action set pieces, 4 of them, but they all work so well within the context of the movie. They all like hang the framework of the movie really well, while still being very vivid and memorable in their own right. I feel like each one of them really adds something to the overall film. Whereas with something like the MCU, it literally just is like, as soon as the action starts, I just glaze over. Like I'm getting so bored with action now. It's like, I saw the trailer for, I think a good point of comparison is actually the trailer for Kong X Godzilla. Because not only is that movie like, it's like, okay, like we're trying to do the cinematic universe thing, which has been very hit or miss for the MonsterVerse. and we're also trying to like, this is a sequel to Kong versus Godzilla, and it's just much like Aquaman. It's just one of those things where there's like nothing in the trailer that even looks like tangible. Yeah, man. I mean, bottom line is that I hope Hollywood takes notes. That's all I can say with this movie.
No, I think part of it is just that, at least from what I understood, this director I think had a good idea of how to sort of, for like the visual effects. And it very feels like for when Godzilla shows up and is on screen, like he's on screen for the right amount of time and can be effective, but not necessarily overpowering. And I think just with Godzilla being the main thing, like the scale, the way, like the anatomy moves in terms of regeneration when it gets injured and all that stuff, it's very like it's not overdone. It's just the right amount of like visual flair to make it interesting, but still like epic.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's just go ahead and break it down. I honestly think a good way to break down the framework of this movie is to kind of go action set piece by action set piece, and then kind of talk about the broader thematic stuff sort of in between that. So, because I really do think the set pieces just kind of like are just situated in like a really perfect pace throughout the film. So we start off with the island attack, which for my money is like straight out of the cold open of Jurassic Park, where I mean, you get a better look at Godzilla than you do the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, obviously, because in Jurassic Park you really don't see him at all. Or I'm sorry, in Jurassic Park it's a raptor, actually. It's not even the T-Rex that they're teasing. But just the lighting, the fact that Godzilla is very much in almost kind of like baby form. Like he's like the size of like maybe a 2-story building in the scene. And the scale is just impressive all the way around. But just like, I feel like by making him smaller, it almost makes him more tangible and more scary in a way. At least that was my first impression when he first showed up.
Yeah, it very doesn't feel like it's not like classic Godzilla. It's kind of like Godzilla Year One, if that makes sense. So there's kind of a bit of not scrappiness, but I feel like by him being not too overpowering, it makes the film a little bit fresh and not like, oh, this is just another Godzilla movie. Comes in, wrecks stuff, the end.
Yeah, and of course we set up our main character, who's the kamikaze pilot, who's ditching out on the war, and then has that kind of like. And here's the thing with the main character, and I feel like the characters in general, is that I really don't feel like the main characters are all that fleshed out as personalities. I do think, by and large, they are more or less archetypes. Like, the main 4 on the boat can pretty much be boiled down to protagonist, kid, doctor, and captain, right? I mean, it's like, I honestly don't even know their names. But I'm not even saying that as a bad thing, because I think all 4 of them have very distinct personalities, and they get just enough screen time to be memorable, and you really like their camaraderie. It does kind of feel like a little bit of a Jaws setup with their chemistry they have with each other throughout the movie. There's some really good tension at the beginning. So yeah, let's talk about the main character and his theme of survivor's guilt. And I'm sorry if I'm just calling him the main character. I'm just scared that I'm going to pronounce his name wrong.
Sure. I really appreciated sort of how he's introduced in the movie, where he's like lands on this Odo Island, and it's like, hey, my craft's not working. There will be technical issues, but deep down he's just wanting to be. He's kind of just trying to get out of like being a kamikaze pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think then that sort of like level of guilt and sort of fear kind of manifests itself with like when Godzilla comes into the picture in that opening scene.
Yeah, I mean, the fear is just very tangible, and I feel like Godzilla, just as a destructive force, gets more and more tangible as it goes on. When we talk about the atomic breath, I have a lot of stuff to say about how they film that specifically, especially in regards to like the Japanese like post World War II trauma that they're experiencing. But all right. Let's see. So yeah, like I said, I just everything about how, you know, we follow this guy, he's on the boat with like the hundreds of other people, just kind of like one lost soul in a sea of lost souls. That shot to me still is one of the most powerful shots in the movie, I think. And then we kind of come upon the town that's just been ravaged. And I think this town very much serves as a character in its own right, where it's kind of like when we start up, the town is just pretty much desolate. I mean, it's like they're literally like picking up the pieces. There's not much left. I like that. I also like that there's a communal element where, you know, even the people that are like, you know, we have the neighbor woman who very much blames this guy for getting her own son killed because of his own cowardice. In spite of that, they literally only have each other. So it's like, you know, there is like a sense of almost kind of trauma bonding. And I kind of feel like the main relationship in the movie, I really like how they play it where it's not ever quite romantic. You know what I mean?
It is and it isn't. I feel like there is romance, but I think it's just kind of like...
I like how romance, it's not like a typical Hollywood romance. And I've spoken about this before, how I'm just kind of sick of the typical Hollywood romance, where it's just like they would just get together instantly. Whereas I feel like the whole movie, more or less, it's obvious that they're trying to you know, come to the same page and they need each other. But I don't necessarily, I really think that the end of the movie really is kind of solidifying, like, yeah, they need each other in a romantic kind of way. But I don't know, I feel like it's almost kind of like just a really odd circumstance that brings them together. So I do think that there is, I don't want to say it's platonic because it's not necessarily platonic, but like I said, it's more so a trauma bond more than anything else.
Yeah, especially with the fact that they've lost their family members from the air bombings. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the way she's introduced and the way she is,
Hello?
Yeah, so, and every like when she's introduced in the scene, she's kind of this like beggar woman that, you know, is just trying to make ends meet. And just the fact that the main character, like, even though he's going through trauma, he has a level of compassion. There's something there that compels him to take care of this woman, this kid. And then that's kind of an interesting idea that's like, hey, with all the crap that you've gone through, he's still able to, you know, be human. He hasn't necessarily cut himself off. He's in a lot of fears, a lot of pain, but that doesn't mean he's like cynical or just emotionless.
And I feel like that's a really, really great, accurate depiction of trauma and what something like PTSD will do to a person. You know, the fact that like he has like this reoccurring thing where he literally has a hard time wrapping his mind around the fact that he did not die on that island, that he's still in his own mind, like, you know, sometimes thinks that he's still back on that island, just rotting away. And that everything after his life is just like a dying, like, delusion or something. That I feel like you hit it perfectly, where it's like he's trying to get by day by day, and generally speaking, with the help of this woman, he's doing a good job of it. And the child, of course, you know, they're both elements of his life. And I do like that I feel like the movie skips past the 2 years in a really eloquent kind of passage of time where it's not quite montage. Like, I feel like we get just enough of a sense of the passing of time where it doesn't feel rushed. But, you know, but that scar is still going to be there. So it's very realistic to real mental health struggles, where it's like the best you can do is just have good days. And when it does come up, just kind of like you almost just kind of have to like white knuckle through it sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think like with that montage of them just like making a life for themselves, and within sort of a year or two, it seems like after the war ended, like there is some level of beauty. There's just something really nice and comforting in like a Miyazaki kind of a way, which makes sense because I think I think I remember reading up on this like after watching the movie, reading up on the production of it. It's like the director did take inspiration from Miyazaki movies as well as Jaws and like the original Godzilla.
So speaking of Jaws, what do you think of the crew? Do you think what I laid out for them, where it's like they're basically archetypes, but they're just really fun archetypes, is pretty accurate?
No, I think they're fun archetypes because then you kind of have like interesting male figures that you either were, are, or known in your life, and can just try to really feel for them and really get excited for their being able to be triumphant and survive. It's kind of crazy that like nobody major really dies in the movie, but it doesn't feel cheap because it feels, I think it's reinforcing the theme of hey, for all the tragedy, all this like suffering, there is hope, and you don't necessarily have to die to make that possible. You don't have to like.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, a big element of this movie that's very cultural to Japan that I feel like American audiences might even have a hard time even wrapping their head around is the fact that like, that sense of loyalty to fight for your country in Japan was like, like in America, it's kind of like, like we definitely have a sense of oorah patriotism to our military. But I feel like with Japan, especially during World War II, it was almost straight up nihilistic, where it's like, yeah, it's like if you're going in to fight the war, it's like you are going to give your life. And that's the thing to do for your country. And if you don't do it, then you're a bad countryman. And that kind of mentality is what the movie is trying to specifically rally against. And I think it's a beautiful message. I would really love to hear Evan's opinion on this. Joker's Wild, because he lives in Japan. He's lived in Japan for a number of years now. So I really think he'd have some really valuable insight into this film culturally.
Yeah, it is really ingenious to have like the setting be post-war Japan, and there being someone openly going through PTSD being the protagonist. Like I can't imagine like an American film that has that level of like a realness with like a big budget and it's like a genre movie. And it succeeds at both. Like,
I mean, I can think of like like dramas. Like the closest I can think of is something like Born on the 4th of July. But that, like you said, that's not a genre movie per se.
No, it's kind of like take a regular Godzilla movie plus Deer Hunter, or any movie that's like a war, PTSD, like coming back from the war, dealing with PTSD, and somehow it works. The stuff that are genre focused. This is as genuine, authentic as the real life human drama aspect of it.
Sure. All right. So for my money, I actually think the best action scene in the movie is that second scene on the boat, because it is so reminiscent of Jaws, and in a really good way, not in a rip-off way, not in like an, okay, hey, remember Jaws? Yeah, we're going to do Jaws. No, in a way that's very much like an homage to the original, while still being just as compelling, if not more compelling, and really doing something new with the formula of, because Jaws, it was a shark. Here, it's just something entirely like, there's so many shots in this sequence, just in this one sequence, that I think are just going to be like all-timers, like the shot of just Godzilla's massive body swimming under the tiny boat, or just the spikes coming out of the water, just the spikes, not even any of his other part of the body. I mean, just the way that they play with the scale, the way that it builds up his regeneration powers with the, with the bomb that goes off inside his mouth, and you know, him exploding like half his face and still just instantly healing. That is just a big, like, oh shit kind of moment. Yeah, I don't know. I love everything about this sequence. It's not even that I think the film like peaks here or anything, because I definitely don't think it does. But I'm just saying, like, I think a lot of the most memorable imagery from this movie is going to come from this sequence in particular. For me, at least, I think.
Yeah, no, I think what I appreciated about it was that, like, the sequence where they're on the boat and they're trying to like kill off Godzilla. Like, it's like clearly our main character is trying to process his grief and just like, and it's just, you know, not in the absence of fear, but in overcoming it just to be able to make a scratch on him. And make a scratch on him, and he comes back and just causes all hell to break, you know, causes all hell to break loose. And just the sheer defeat that like the main group like is feeling, like you feel that as well, because the film just does a good job of putting you in the like with those characters, because I think part of it's because they're so archetypal, you're able to kind of put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, totally. All right, I'm gonna just kind of go through some comments here. Little Blue says James Rolfe stated that too about the Top Gun sequel. He reviewed -1 recently. Yeah, it's I don't know, like Maverick, like I said, there's very little in Maverick to dislike, right? Like Maverick is a movie that is very hard to find fault with. For me personally, though, I just find very little to get actively excited about, especially because I'm not crazy about like putting Tom Cruise on a pedestal. I don't know. Tom Cruise is a weird man. You know what I mean? Like that, I'm not gonna lie, that is kind of a factor for why I'm not ready to just declare Maverick to be like the savior of cinema or anything. Let's see. Kogias does make a good point here. The lack of celebrities in this film helped the budget. There are actors like Dwayne Johnson, Robert Downey Jr., etc. that cost around $30 million per film, which is like twice the budget of this movie just for the actor alone. So yes, that is a very good point.
Yeah. Also, I figure probably depending on when this was made, I assume like COVID, like when they made this movie, the COVID they were at Japan, like where Japan was, like in terms of like COVID, wasn't to the degree in which like they had to do much lockdowns or restrictions. So that thing that probably helped, because then that was like an additional cost for a lot of Hollywood studios as well.
All right, where do you want to go next?
I think like when Godzilla just comes to the city and just wrecks. Just provides pure terror to the people of Japan.
And I think it's really interesting that that's the one time in the movie where he actually does reach mainline Japan. You know what I mean? And it's not even like the climax of the movie. Like, that's a really interesting directorial choice, because essentially what that does is it shows off the stakes. It gives us a really good low of lows with Japan, where it's like, you know, all throughout the movie, Japan in its own right kind of becomes a character where it's, you know, it's rebuilding right along with the people that we're following. And then suddenly something like this happens, and I'll, you know, put a pin in the atomic breath, because that's going to be something we're really going to have to highlight. But you just feel the devastation. You just feel like, oh man, like all this fucking progress that they've been making over the past couple of years, and the story is just going out the window. Like, you know, like you really get into the heads of these people and feel like the collective like national trauma that something like this would be in real life. So I thought that was a very powerful way to convey something like that. And yeah, just the atomic breath scene, the way it's shot, I think I haven't seen anything quite like that. And I'm sorry, I know people are going to shit on The Last Jedi. Honestly, The Last Jedi, a lot of stuff in that movie doesn't hold up. I still think most of the Kylo Ren and Luke stuff does hold up, and that's kind of where I hang my hat on the movie. Mm-hmm. But the kamikaze moment in Last Jedi with Holdo. Say what you will about Holdo, and it probably should have been Admiral Akbar doing that actual maneuver, but that moment itself is freaking stunning. And I think the way that the atomic breath is shot, the way that like you see the reactions on the characters, the audio kind of goes out, you know, the lighting shifts, everything about the way they shoot it just has this total sense of devastation. And of course, obviously, with the atomic breath, it's like, you know, the biggest point of collective trauma for the Japanese is going to be the nuke, the nuclear element of it. So yeah, it just hits so much harder than it has in any other Godzilla movie. Where any other Godzilla movie, the atomic breath is basically like, you know, like him going Super Saiyan. You know what I mean? It's the badass moment, essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas this is anything but badass.
No, it's just like it's basically Godzilla can be like, I think franchise can kind of dip into the horror space, but this definitely felt like it's not horror in the slasher sense. It's like horror is like, this is like Day After Tomorrow or like 2012, where like
Children of Men.
Yeah, well, I just think in terms of scale, but I think the feeling, like it feels like a natural disaster that you can't, like, you know, run away from. You just have to kind of like go through it and just be able to, like, you know, live long enough to like tell anyone what happened, you know, the next day. So
I will say though, this scene does give us probably, for me, the most divisive moment in the movie. Which is, I'm going to try my best to pronounce her name. Noriko, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Her pushing, I really don't want to, Shikishima, I think is the guy's name, him out into the alley so she can take the full brunt of the blast. I think on paper that works as like a sacrificial move, and also kind of like if you're in the heat of the moment and you don't really know what to do, I buy it. But with that in mind, her surviving at the end, although I will say that I do think the acting in that final moment just saves it from any sort of hokiness, because you really feel the genuine emotion, the catharsis, the hope in that moment when those two are reunited, and it does play well. It does kind of leave you with that sense. It ties all the themes together very well. But in the back of my mind, Rohit, do you know what movie I was thinking of when that was going down just a little bit?
No.
Spielberg's War of the Worlds.
I see what you mean, yeah.
With the son, like, inexplicably surviving at the very end.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, that is hokey as shit. And the son coming back, there is no emotional catharsis. Like, Tom Cruise never liked that little snot-nosed brat. There is no emotional catharsis to those two reuniting. Like, and there is all the emotional catharsis in the world in the last scene in this movie. Like, that's the big difference maker right there, right? But yeah, just as far as the actual convenience of her being alive, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard for me to buy it. It's like the one element of the movie where my cynical brain kind of does click on a little bit.
At the same time, though, it is thematically relevant, because it's like the whole point of the movie is that you don't have to sacrifice, or like heroic sacrifice. It should not be the end goal of one's life, or like sacrifice yourself to save your group or nation. It shouldn't be what your life is. Your life should be being able to survive, being able to spend time with the people you love. And for her, she did do a heroic sacrifice. So I think her being able to survive and him telling her that the war is over for him, I think is really emotionally resonant. And so the logistics for being able to survive, I think, is kind of overcome by the thematic resonance and like cumulative effect of concluding the main character's arc.
No, I absolutely hear you. I do hear you. And like I said, the emotional catharsis is there. And also just, I mean, it is one hell of a low of lows, right? Just because, like, the main character is already dealing with a shit ton of survivor's guilt. And now this is like the ultimate form of survivor's guilt right here. This is survivor's guilt on like a micro level as opposed to a macro level, which can be even more painful. So, yeah, it's like, I definitely think as a plot point, it works. I don't know. Honestly, maybe my whole thing is like she gets blown back like 50 feet, man. It's like I kind of wish that visually it would have been a little bit more ambiguous. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like at the end of the day, that's kind of a nitpick. But then also the stuff on the train too is really compelling.
Yeah.
All right. So then that leads us into the third act. Do you want to talk about the plan to defeat Godzilla? Because I think it's a super clever plan, and I like it a lot.
I like how, like, I think if this was like an American movie, like it would be like drop this big bomb, or shoot, or point a gun, or like super powered laser, or whatever. Right? This is like, hey, let's use like flotation devices, or like rockets, or thrusters to kind of like push the creature down all the way, depending on how much pressure they can handle, and then eyes up super fast, and then because of that, that causes the skin or whatever to like really cool down to almost to like a freezing point, and then you like drop. I mean, there is still a bomb, like, but it's like you have to like neutralize or weaken the creature significantly, and it has to be timed just right.
Yeah, I mean, it basically comes down to water pressure, which is super clever.
Yeah. And also it like brings in like a military element with it, because you have like the former sailors come in, but it's not like these are like ships just like shooting like guns or whatever at Godzilla, because Godzilla is way too strong for that.
For sure. All right. And then also just let's talk about just the there's a lot going on with this finale that I really like. I really like the fact that for once in a Godzilla movie, thematically, this is like incredibly important. It is not the government that is trying to take down Godzilla. The government basically wants to bury its head in the sand and ignore the problem. But I love how it's like, because they know that any sort of military action on their end would just raise a whole bunch of red flags. And I love that.
Yeah.
It's a real moral gray area right there.
Yeah. And I wonder, in light of like what has happened in the past few years, if it's kind of informed by like current stuff, whether it's specific Japan or just really general, about the government kind of just like putting their head in the sand, and like private citizens, with military experience, kind of just have to rally themselves to like beat Godzilla.
I will say, I do think probably the most Hollywood element of the whole movie is the storyline with the kid, where there is a lot of stuff that I do like about that character. And generally speaking, I don't even mind the Hollywoodness of it.
Sure.
But I really love the introduction of that character, where he's just, very head in the clouds, like, oh, I wish I would have gone to war. I wish the war was still going on. And I love that look that the main character gives him. Like, that sets up everything you need to know. It's such good character building with so little, you know what I mean? It's so rich with just a couple little pieces of dialogue.
Yeah.
But then what I'm specifically talking about, though, is the whole element of is anyone who ever watches this movie who's seen at least one movie in their life going to think that when the kid walks away the night before the main battle and he's like, gee willikers, I sure wish that I could be involved in the main battle. Like, is there anyone with a pulse that is actually survived that is surprised that kid is going to show back up in the finale?
Yeah, it's not a surprise, but I think it's kind of
it's a total gimme. It's a total gimme.
It's kind of like, it's very like Independence Day, where it's like, oh, here's like the rapscallions, or just like down at like sort of the like the kids or like just the characters that have a lot of like gumption that like get to save the day or contribute to saving the day. So that's something where it's like, even though the movie is like very centered in human drama with the post-war setting and all that stuff, it is at the end of the day still like a genre movie. So that's kind of things where it's like, the audience has to not even necessarily suspend their disbelief, but just kind of have to like get over the hump of it being a well-worn cliche and just kind of appreciate for the sum of the parts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. But I will say though, like when the kid does arrive, I think, and all the ships like that company.
I think the fact that he basically pulls a Dunkirk is what makes that moment work, right?
Yeah, or like
Rise of Skywalker. That I feel like in a Hollywood movie, he would be the one that shows up and almost single-handedly saves the day. You know what I mean?
It's a collective effort.
Exactly, and I can totally get behind that. And it's, but did you get the Dunkirk of it all when all the tugboats?
I was thinking more Rise of Skywalker with like.
Oh come on, Rise of Skywalker! That's the war that they're pulling on in that moment to begin with. It's
true. But like, I mean, yeah, no, but
or I'm sorry, as Mark Rylance would say, Dunkirk. All right. Trigon would crucify me if I mentioned that movie and didn't do it in the Mark Rylance tone.
No.
We've got to go to Dunkirk.
No, I appreciate it. It's not really one character. It's all like it's all a group effort, and it's like a step-by-step process.
Oh, totally.
And I kind of want to transition to sort of the climax, the culmination of this is like when the main character is flying his plane. It's like, oh, he's going to do his sacrifice and end his
fear. See, Nolan, this is how you write an escape hatch into your movie and not have it be confusing as shit.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I really love, like, not just, it's like, the flashback is one thing, but the fact is that the character who would have every like right feeling in their mind, their heart, to want our main guy to die, said, hey, you need to live. Even he, who lost all his friends or colleagues because of the main character's cowardness, is still wanting him to live. Because even he recognizes that war, Godzilla, just this period of trauma and pain needs to end. And you need, and it's not about just sacrifice yourself. I think there's something, it's kind of like, it's a very anti-war or like, message about, hey, you can't just like people's lives are not cannon fodder. They mean something. And there has to be more to your life. And there should be more to your life after the big war struggle's over. That you get to have a life with your family, with your loved ones and all that stuff.
Sure. Well said. All right, and then just let's see. Anything else you want to say about just like the action, about the look of Godzilla in general? One thing about the look of Godzilla in general is that I do think that in the face, I love how pissed off he looks, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Like you really see it in his eyes. You know what I mean? And it's not even really emotion; it's more so just blind, like confused rage.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shoot, Rohit. I think we pretty much summed it up.
Yeah, I think like it's a simple movie.
It is, yeah.
With the themes, like there's complex themes, but they're done in a way that's like easy for most people to understand and appreciate. So, and I think because of that, it's just really effective.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, and then just also like Hollywood just needs to take notes of the budget, man. If this like God-forsaken 3-headed hydra of a year for Hollywood blockbusters has taught us anything, maybe tone down those budgets, just a little bit. And if the stars are requiring too much money, you can do a lot with a high concept. And who knows, maybe doing something really creative with a high concept will pull out the next batch of stars, which is something that we're desperately in need of to begin with. So yeah, Hollywood, please take notes.
I think if I were to make any recommendations for Hollywood in regards to learning about this movie, is that simplicity is everything. And I think when people talk about simple plots, it's like I think with this movie, it's very straightforward. It's nothing super complex. It's very understandable. I think it's about maybe not simplicity is the right word, sincerity. I think when you have a story that even is in a very fantastical setting, if you can mine what makes these characters breathe, what makes these characters feel fear, tension, hope, all that stuff, and it's like, and if the audience feels that way, the movie succeeds. This movie doesn't work if we don't care about these characters. It's crazy because I can believe me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tiki. Isn't it sort of a refrain in Godzilla for Godzilla movies is that like the human characters kind of like sign out? It's all about the big guy.
More or less, yeah. I feel like that's actually kind of been the complaint with the Godzilla MonsterVerse, which frankly I don't fucking agree with. I've never understood that. It's like it's not that hard to write really compelling characters. As a matter of fact, I have always looked at, and I'm going to pull this again. Like if you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you've probably heard me talk about this movie before. So I apologize if I'm like saying something like repeating myself. But Kong Skull Island for me was the one movie in the Warner Brothers MonsterVerse where the main characters didn't feel like just complete styrofoam. Like you had John C. Reilly as the as the Robinson Crusoe kind of character. Mm-hmm. You had Tom Hiddleston as kind of like the leading man, who's probably one of the least interesting characters in that movie, but he, it's Hiddleston, so he still has some charisma to him.
Yeah.
And you have John Goodman in basically like a Carl Denham kind of role, and he really steals the show for the screen time he does get. Mm-hmm. You have Sam Jackson, and I do not think people give Sam Jackson enough credit in that movie. I freaking love his Captain Ahab ass arc in that movie. So that movie just has a lot going for it. I mean, just the John C. Reilly character alone is has more heart and more memorable stuff going on with his character than literally the entire other 3 Godzilla movies put together. Literally anything in Godzilla 2014 or King of the Monsters or Godzilla versus Kong. It's not that hard to write a few characters that are compelling and have them be played by compelling performers. It's really not that difficult. Mm-hmm. So I definitely don't agree with this whole notion of we just need a Godzilla movie where it's literally just 2 hours of kaijus punching each other. It's no, that would be boring as shit. That would be like watching someone play a video game that you can't control. I don't want that.
Or playing with action figures.
Right. So, all right. Anyways, Warp Monarch is in the comments. They're saying Godzilla -1 really brought kaiju movies back into the spotlight. Indeed, Warp Monarch. Absolutely agree. And I think it's really funny that Warner Brothers, them dropping the Godzilla X Kong, the kingdom of something.
It's the new empire.
It's just I'm so done. I am so done with this franchise, oversaturated, giant budget CGI muddy garbage shit. I have next to no interest in seeing that movie. I don't know. It's there are some interesting movies coming out this next year that have potential, that are based on long-running franchises, and that do have boatloads of CG. I'm specifically thinking of the new Planet of the Apes film. Now, that movie is not being done by Matt Reeves, so I am worried about that movie. But just given the track record of the new Planet of the Apes movies, it's one of those things where it's I'm at the very least going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
But by and large, it's this sort of hyper-budgeted CGI dreck just needs to stop. All right. So I think I've pretty much said my piece on this.
Yeah, but I think on a final note, for anyone that's seen this movie, please recommend it to your friends or anyone. I think like this movie, in spite of it being a Japanese kaiju movie with subtitles, I think everyone who's young to old would appreciate this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's it's got more than enough action to hold over the younger audiences. It's got more than enough substance to hold over cynical assholes like us. So, all right. Okay, well, I think that's about it. So big thanks to Little Blue, Kogias, and Warp Monarch for joining us in the comments this evening. Just to give you all a little taste of what you can expect tomorrow, Jacob is doing a trip report where he went to a Comic-Con and he met Bill Farmer amongst a variety of other people in the nerd sphere. So Dragon is going to hear Jacob talk about that tomorrow. And then, of course, Friday, Dragon and Jacob will be back with their Phineas and Ferb Recapinator. And then, Rohit, you and Dragon are going to be covering Merry Little Batman on Sunday.
That is correct.
So, yeah, look forward to all that. You guys are awesome. See y'all later. Have a good one.
Sayonara.
Didn't see that one coming.